And we are back on the Build Face podcast. I'm Mr. Ben, and today, again, I am joined by two, not one, but two guests. First, I want to welcome foundational team, unfortunately now defunct, Team Attack member Peter. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for addressing me as foundational. That feels good.
I think that's fair. The Team Attack podcast, like old school, kind of foundational to the Versus community.
Yeah, I guess if it wasn't for you though, we wouldn't have existed. So always remember that you are the true foundation.
I'm okay. I'm gonna move on because that touching my heart there, Peter. And also on this show, we have active team member from Team Build Phase and curator of the Reddit wiki, Jason. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So I'm going to lay this out up front for the listener. We actually recorded this entire podcast last week and I screwed it up. I broke the audio. So there may be some like weird moments throughout the course of this show where we kind of stumble a little bit. Like, did we talk about this already? Oh no, that was on the one that did. So, fair warning up front. Also, the content of the show, I'm going to put a content warning here. I'll probably record another one prior to the episode, but we are going to be talking about stuff that is not child appropriate by any stretch of the imagination. And that is the recent announcement from Upper Deck that Mortal Kombat 11 is going to be included in the game of Versus. So when I got this news, the first thing I thought of was two people that I know that are both big fighting game fans, and I wanted to bring them on here so we could just kind of dig our teeth into talking about Mortal Kombat. So to start things off, I'm going to kick it over to Peter. Can you give us a rundown of kind of like what your Mortal Kombat experience has been?
Well, my Mortal Kombat experience has been probably since about day one. I shouldn't say like day one, but like Mortal Kombat on Sega Genesis. And it's been one of those fundamental fighting games that's just been around forever, and I've liked it forever. Like it was one of my first big fighting games. I never really got into Street Fighter, but Mortal Kombat just for whatever reason the graphics sucked me in, and I've been a fan. And then I played up through I think it was Ultimate 3, with I think was like a PlayStation 1 slash old Genesis game or whatever. And then I kind of dropped off. And then 10 hit, and I started seeing some ground movement. I heard it was really good. I watched some videos of it, and I started watching Evo matches of it. And I was like, oh, I could get into this. And then I heard the announcement 11 was dropping. And when 11 dropped, I got into it. And then I started playing online, and that's when I kind of dropped it because I was not good online. I realized I like playing with my friends, but I don't like playing with people I don't know because trash talk is 90% of fighting games. But yeah, and since then I've been casually playing Mortal Kombat 11. I unfortunately sold my copy and I had to re-get it, but now when 11 got announced, the revigoration was back. So that's me.
Right on. So let's kick it over to Jason. What has been your experience with Mortal Kombat prior to the Versus announcement?
Yeah, so mine I think is fairly similar to Peter's. Dating myself a little bit here, I think I started playing the original Mortal Kombat in high school. I remember going to the bowling alley, and that was like the big thing. Everybody gathered around the MK machine. So I played through Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 as well. I think I might have hit some of the other like kind of interim releases just a little bit, but wasn't into it too heavily. Got back in quite a bit with MKX or Mortal Kombat 10, and hadn't actually played 11 until the announcement, and then I'm like, oh, I have to get this and get reacquainted with the story. And probably speaking of which, should probably say there might be some spoilers for the MK11 story mode here. So if you don't want spoilers, just beware. But I've been a fighting games fan, yeah, like you said, basically forever, and Mortal Kombat was definitely one of the tops for me.
Well, I appreciate you picking up my slack on the content warning there, Jason. I should have done a spoiler warning in addition to a plug the children's ears warning for this particular episode. Much like you guys, I started with Mortal Kombat, the very first one, at Bally Aladdin's Castle. Unfortunately, I had Super Nintendo instead of Genesis, so I had the dumb-looking version of it. So I'm retroactively jealous of your formative years, Peter. I fell away from the series. I think with 2, I played 3, but it wasn't something that I really got into. I was, I'll admit, a little more of a Street Fighter guy, but I think maybe that had something to do with the fact that I had a Super Nintendo and parents who really didn't want me to play Mortal Kombat. So it was like, you know,
Yeah,
you can't be a beggar if that's what you know what I mean? You can't be choosy.
and Street Fighter
uh,
was better on the Super.
I did. So kind of like you guys, I fell off. I did not get back in with Mortal Kombat 10, but once the announcement was made that MK11 was going to be coming to Versus, I went and watched a bunch of YouTube videos to get up to speed with the story from MK9, MK10, and then went into 11, fully prepared for it. And overall, the story, there's a lot of things I like about it. It was like big, dumb fun. It's kind of what you want to see from a Mortal Kombat, or at least what I now at 41 want to see from a Mortal Kombat story. I don't know if I even cared what the story was when I was a kid. Um, there is one point though that specifically on the versus box art we see MK11, and I'm curious. I'll start with Jason. Do you have any thoughts on what the differences might be between the way some of the characters are portrayed in MK11 compared to like those classic versions that probably everybody remembers from when they were young?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm kind of hoping that with some of the characters who have stuck with the series, that we'll see maybe callbacks to some of their history a little bit. But I suspect we might see. Man, it's hard to know. There, one thing again, spoiler alert. There's a number of characters who have kind of a zombie. I think they refer to it as a revenant version. Um, so, like Liu Kang, for example, has an evil version. I'm curious to see if they pull those in, or given the fact that there is such a robust assortment of characters anyway, if they just kind of try to pull from the like typical, so to speak, versions of each of those characters.
Now, one of the things that happens within the story of Mortal Kombat 11 is there's a lot of time travel shenanigans going on. So while there's some of our characters who we only see in the contemporary like MK11 timeline, that we only see that version of them. There are other characters who pull from kind of more classic Mortal Kombat lore, and there's even like Liu Kang, for instance, has 3 different versions. So I'm going to throw it over to Peter. What are your thoughts on sort of classic Mortal Kombat versus the specific depictions from the story of MK11?
Personally, I would love to see go with the more classic look, but that's just coming from that old school person. But I think they're gonna stick with just kind of I hate to say it, but like base game Mortal Kombat 11. Like we're gonna stick with Liu Kang, like you said, has 3 different versions. Like even in that game, but I think they'll stick with like probably non-revenant Liu Kang because he's just recognizable. Just characters like Johnny Cage will probably stay that Mortal Kombat 11 look. Even Raiden, who has like the traditional like white look, like his robes will probably have his Mortal Kombat 11 gear on because it's just not necessarily iconic, but more people recognize it from like, oh, I remember playing that character. Hopefully that gets eyes on the game. So
Sure. I mean, Super Awesome Games is kind of known for being theme first and how they design cards. Maybe arguably, sometimes to a fault, they pour the theme on. Generally speaking, though, I think that's one of the strongest points of Versus is they really get the flavor of the specific character, but also the kind of setting. Like, you look at the Buffy box, and you can really kind of feel the storylines. They're similar with X Files and other things that they've done. So I have a feeling they're going to lean pretty heavily into the specific storyline of MK11. Uh, but I kind of, there are a few. Well, we'll get to this when we get to characters. There are a few things that are non-negotiable for me that I absolutely need to see. But before we get to character specific stuff, let's talk about the Mortal Kombat mechanics. So we all kind of laid out that we have sort of a personal history with interacting with this video game franchise, and clearly we all have a strong abiding love and some strong opinions on Versus. So thinking about marrying these two things together, what are some Mortal Kombat game mechanics that you want to see translated to Versus, and kind of how do you think they might go about implementing that? Let's start with Jason on this one.
Yeah, one thing that, especially I think starting with Mortal Kombat 3, we started to see, and I think has stuck with the series for the most part, is a heavy emphasis on like multi-hit combos. So I'm trying to think through like how could they incorporate that as a mechanic. One thing that came to mind is maybe you've got a combo mechanic that based on the number of combo abilities or cards you've played gives an additional boost. So let's say I think something like the what is it, the Blackbird for invention, where the more characters you have in it, the bigger boost you get. Maybe something similar where like if you've got combo plot twists and combo keywords or combo superpowers, the more that you play in a given combat, maybe there's a boosted effect. Like if it's combo 1, you just get +1. If it's combo 2, you get +3, something like that.
Now, do you think they would need to build that mechanic in such a way where it's like checking the KO pile, essentially making it cumulative over the course of the game? I'm thinking of what's that? Is it like Enchantress who draws an extra card for every time you've used that power this turn?
That would be
Uh,
Morgan Le Fay.
there you go, Morgan Le Fay. That's who I was thinking of. So something like that. Or are you more kind of looking for the idea of like I have to save up these cards in my hand because if you play 3 cards to get this combo effect in one turn, that's a heavy draw. So unless these characters have some kind of built-in card draw, that's going to feel like a maybe once or twice per game combo type thing. Like, what is it that you'd like to see from a combo mechanic?
Yeah, I got to give credit. I forget who it was during our original recording suggested that maybe the combo mechanic is that the more of these combo moves you pull off or combo cards you play, maybe that results in card draw. So if I do one combo move, you just get the boost. But if you do 2 combo moves, you get the boost plus draw, a card. If you do the 3 of them, draw 3 cards or something like that. So I think that would be a cool way to both incorporate the feeling of like, yeah, I'm stacking up these moves, as well as not punishing you by depleting your hand for doing it.
And then overall, we'd probably see more of our total 60 cards, which is something that I think Versus probably could use a little bit more of. In a lot of games, you only see maybe a third of the deck. So having a built-in mechanic that drains your hand but also replenishes it feels like it could be pretty substantive, and it would really make the Mortal Kombat cards kind of stick out from a lot of other verses where there isn't a ton of card draw. Peter, do you have any thoughts on the combo mechanic?
Well, so yeah, thinking about this, like what you just said, where like it'd be cool to see the rest of your deck. Like I tend to play aggro decks, and really I only see the first maybe 30 cards of my deck. Let's be honest. In theory, I should be winning before I get halfway through my deck because I'm just dumping and drawing 2. Like what Jason said, that'd be great. Like draw cards off of it. And then I was thinking, like, if characters had combo printed on them, why couldn't we use them as like the combo card? Like almost like a power up, but instead you're just discarding it to keep the combo going.
Oh, that's a really
So that
cool
way you
idea,
not
man.
so that way you're not just reliant on like plot twists. That way your whole deck becomes something, well, not necessarily your whole deck, but a big chunk of your deck becomes something that can keep that going, which I think would be really cool. But I mean, I tend to think overpowered sometimes, so maybe that there's probably some downfall in that,
I mean,
like
giving you
just
the
being able to discard your
ability
entire hand.
like to choose between powering up a card or like triggering a combo, or maybe when you use that card as a power up, it counts as one step of the combo. All that sounds pretty interesting to me.
Yeah. At least because, like, yeah, like you said, like it becomes a power up and a combo. Like, okay, so here's my combo starter. I get a +1. So here we go. Let's go and see what else I can do with this.
So sticking with you,
And
Peter, talking about Mortal Kombat classic mechanics, things that you need to see in versus, what's something that you want to bring into the game, and how would you like to see that implemented?
As you know, I want to see blocks. Every fighting game has some sort form of block. It doesn't matter if to hold backwards or hold a button. Like you should be able to not necessarily stop all damage, but just take chip damage, so to speak. But so the original idea I had for this was like a plot twist that just stops an attack. It doesn't necessarily cancel it, it just stops it.
So
But
kind of
then
like
as we
In
were
Good
talking throughout
Hands.
the night, yeah, like in good hands, exactly. Like I think you pointed that out last time. I should really memorize that card. um, but as we talked through the night, I was thinking about it. It'd be actually kind of cool if I could exhaust characters to block. Like you're attacking my front row. Okay, well, I'm gonna exhaust characters in my front row to block the attacks. That way I have less characters, and maybe they could it's almost like a freeze mechanic where they can't untap, or sorry, I've been playing some weird games, but like ready up. So that way, okay, well, I exhausted the block and now I can't do anything. I'm being kind of punished for not taking damage. And I think that could make a real interesting, like, kind of game to the aggro deck. Like, okay, I need attackers, but I also need to not take hits. So how are we going to do this?
Well, and it's definitely true that part of the block mechanic in most fighting games is kind of punishing the opponent for attacking into the block. So
Yeah,
having some way to represent that, like freeze you mentioned, I think that kind of all fits the flavor. Jason, do you have any thoughts on a block mechanic?
Yeah, I like the idea of you mentioned chip damage, like something that maybe stops the stun but results in a negative counter being applied or something like that, you know. So it's not entirely because there's already a lot of combat canceling, I think, in photo, but that would make you have to kind of balance like, okay, it's gonna hurt me in the long run to just sit back and block, but if it allows me to build up board state, or maybe there's some way to remove those counters or whatever, you know, maybe it's worth it and it's part of my strategy.
I like that actually. That's really good.
Yeah, yeah, that sounded really cool.
Like, I think that's what I know I'm going to gush a little bit, but this conversation, even though it's the second time we're having it, that there's new ideas coming into it just talking about it. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. How like I wasn't sure how natural it was going to sound the second time around, but we're still surprising each other, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so my classic,
Yeah, I
absolute
got to hear that.
must-have Mortal Kombat mechanic has got to be the fatalities. We have to have some kind of fatality in whether it's a plot twist or there's a new keyword type. You know, we have spellcasters as sort of a new keyword type that interacts with plot twists, and they're kind of their own little thing. Like the spellcaster mechanic is kind of a silo. I almost feel like fatalities need to be something like that because just giving a bunch of Mortal Kombat characters lethal, okay, yeah, that kind of gets us there, but it like gets us there in like the least interesting, most unsuper awesome games kind of way. So I'm really hoping we see some kind of just over the top nonsense. If we throw back to like way old school Magic the Gathering, I don't know if you guys remember the card Chaos, the Chaos Orb, where you had to physically tear like. Then there was the unglued version where you had to tear it into pieces, Chaos Confetti. Like having a fatality,
Yeah.
like I could see super awesome games printing on a card, you know, tear your opponent's card in half, but not really, in parentheses, or something to that effect. But they have got to bring some kind of fatality mechanic into verses, and it has to be implemented in a way where it's not just like the name of a keyword. You know, they do a lot of like unique name keywords already. That's cool. I've loved that, but I need more from a fatality mechanic than that. I don't know. Have you any reactions to, or ideas how fatalities could be implemented, Jason?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one a lot. There's a couple different ideas I had. One, you know, it's funny thinking back to Mortal Kombat 1 and the outrage that caused, and then comparing that to MK11 and the fatalities, and it's like not even in the same stratosphere. They're pretty, not pretty. They're incredibly graphic. They're incredibly gross. Um, so like, would performing a fatality like gross out the rest of the characters and, you know, apply some sort of uh, negative effect to the rest of the characters? Or you know, one of the big things with fatalities is trying to memorize the button press that you have to do. So is there like a unique combination of locations that you have to pay based on your character in order to pull off the fatality, whatever that means? So I'm really curious. Like, this is the big one. Even though I'm interested in the combos, I think the fatalities I'm really curious to see, because they have to include that.
It'd kind of be like design malpractice to bring Mortal Kombat into a game that has been like we've been trained to expect super awesome games to just kick the tapper off the flavor keg and dump every expansion flavor and theme, and that's like one of the best parts of the game. So leaving out fatalities, I think, would be mind-boggling. Peter, what are you expecting from them on the fatality front?
Um, yeah, I'm with you. Like, if they leave it out, I kind of am like, that's incredibly disappointing. Like, you're right. That is the one thing out of everything that we see, we need to see fatalities. I would like to see it either as maybe like a level 2 power that kind of works like Slayer, maybe a little bit, but just in general, like you have to fulfill something to KO the character. Like, even if it's like pay 3 and they have to be down to, we'll say 2 wounds, because you got to make it kind of worth it to pay a little bit more to kill.
Sure.
But I would like, but you're like, the more and more I think about it, I think it's going to be very hard to kind of balance something that should kill your character, because technically you've already lost the match when you do a fatality. So it's kind of rough that way to balance out.
Yeah,
But
it's going to be
I,
really difficult design space for them to get right. I
yeah,
totally agree with you.
like that's the whole thing is there's going to be balance required for it. But I think no matter what they hit, it's probably going to be a cool idea. We're going to see it. It might not necessarily be like the biggest competitive play to do, but I think it's gonna be something really cool when you're sitting with your friends at the kitchen table and be like, and then you can yell fatality at them and do it. Like, I don't
Honestly,
know how they're gonna implement it,
it'd be
but
kind of
it's gonna
cool
be
if it
great.
was just fatality mode, and if you win the game, then you destroy your opponent's card. I don't know why I'm on this chaos confetti
Wow,
thing
that's
tonight,
brutal.
but
You really are on this chaos confetti
yeah, go
card.
spend another $14, buddy.
Yeah. The problem, Ben, is you're too nice. You would give them the like $14 just so you could do it.
There was an era where, what was it called? Iron Man Magic, where anytime something hit the KO pile, you destroyed the card, like
I
way
would
back in the old
cry.
school days. Yeah, dude.
I would cry. Now,
All
can you
right,
imagine how many
so,
of those people are like thinking about that and how many cards they've ripped up that are worth way too much money now?
oh, I'm sure. That sounds horrible. So this was Jason's idea the first time we recorded this, and I kind of thought he was going to throw it out again, but since it didn't come up, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Terrain specific fatalities. I remember in Mortal Kombat 1 doing the uppercut on the pit and making the guy fall down on the spikes and getting all skewered. We already have the table set through the existence of battle worlds and terrains within the game. So if we see some Mortal Kombat terrains where maybe it's a Mortal Kombat specific game mode where you can play these cards in regular versus, but also, hey, there's this terrain specific version of it where we could get potentially even interactable environments in some kind of way. But more importantly, terrain specific fatalities. I think that's exactly the kind of flavor point Super Awesome Games is likely to hit. Like that feels really SAG to me. And again, I want to credit Jason for this idea the first time we had this conversation.
Yeah, that's one I would love to see them pull off somehow, whether it's based on the location you play or, like you said, a terrain that you do some move and then land your opponent's supporting character on that terrain and they get boiled in an acid bath or whatever the case might be.
Would be
The
pretty
acid,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, the acid. I was trying to think like what other cool stage fatalities there were besides the pit. Oh yeah.
I think that was MK2 had the you knock them off the bridge into the acid.
That
Yeah.
sounds right.
Oh man,
So one other
MK2.
point I wanted to hit before we get into character specific stuff, and that is sort of the terrain. That's a bad word to use because it's terrain means something in versus the landscape of the Mortal Kombat universe. In that, there's three major factions. There's Earthrealm, there's Outworld, and there's Netherrealm. Obviously, Earthrealm could use Earth locations, and Outworld could certainly use space locations. What do you guys think the chances are that we actually see Earth and space basics printed within the photographic universe? Peter?
I mean, optimistically, I would love to see it. It'd be really cool if they did it because that would introduce basic Earth and spaces into photo. The locations, not necessarily powers that use it, but locations. it could be a big turning point because then it would turn on some X-Files cards too. Like that would actually make them very playable. And I think it would be very thematic to put Earth and space into it. So I'll give it like, we'll say like, I think last time I gave it between more than 0 but less than 1. I'll go up to about, we'll say like 20%. I think we'll see it. 20%.
That's definitely more than 0.
Yes.
I think the more than 0 but less than 1 was actually in response to another out there theory I had, but we'll get to that
Okay.
later. Jason,
Oh
did you have
yeah.
any
Okay.
thoughts on like game balance with regard to Earth and space basics, maybe specifically involving Dana Scully because that seems banana
Right.
pants?
Yeah, that was the one I think that jumped out to me as potentially like breakable by adding those in. But you almost got to think at some point they say, you know what, we're going to move ahead with it anyway, because at some point they almost have to introduce those into photo, I would think. So this seems like a good set to bite that bullet and deal with the aftermath either through formats or errata later.
That's the whole thing with formats and stuff. Who knows if we'll ever see like Dana Scully in like that kind of format again, like with Earth being legal,
It's hard to
at least
tell,
for a while.
especially now that they've broken the seal on doing sort of like date-based formats. You know, you look at a game like Magic and it's like the last 2 years of cards. That's their like main format is just the last 2 years of cards. For a long time,
Yeah.
Versus resisted saying card, and they still haven't said cards published on such and such date. I think they've like linked it to the volume number, but that functionally links it to the date the cards came out because it's one volume each year. So I could see them kind of threading that needle where even if they introduce them, they don't let them do super broken things with those X Files cards potentially.
Well, and I think it was somebody pointed it out that like I think it was you, Ben, actually a while ago that some of these older sets are getting harder and harder for newer players to get their hands on. Like, so if we start kind of not necessarily being like that, we can't play with that stuff, but just kind of phasing it out of formats, it opens it up to newer players and sets that they're more easily available to get their hands on. And the volumes are, you can invest 30, $40 and walk away with that arc, which is pretty
Sure.
good.
All right. So the time has come to move into characters. I'm going to start with you, Jason. Who is your number one most excited for Mortal Kombat character coming into Versus, and what do you want to see them do?
Yeah, this is probably the most boring answer, but it's the one I have to go with. Scorpion for sure. He is one of my favorite characters, I think, just like in any fiction IP that I remember. There's just something so innately cool about an undead ninja who can, kind of rip his mask off and look like Ghost Rider and breathe fire on people. So what I want to see from him, and I think what we will see from him, again, sort of obvious, but the spear pull, get over here, it may end up being sort of a basic, pull someone from the back to the front kind of ability. Maybe I'll tack something else onto it just
Well,
to
when
give it a
you
little
do
extra
it, you have
flavor.
to say, get over here, right?
Yeah, there you go. Say, get over here, put a -1 counter and pull a guy to the front row. Yeah, I think that's kind of a no-brainer, and looking forward to seeing how they. I mean, they've got the guy on the cover art, so he's definitely going to be a prominent figure.
Do you have any thoughts on Scorpion, Peter?
I mean, while I agree with Jason, he might seem like the blandest, but he is kind of that cover art character. And I mean, he's got a teleport. He's got the, teleport and punch you in the back of the head, which will be great. I'd love to see teleport on more cards or more ways to get into the back row without having to clear the front row. Even if it's just a single attack here and there. I think he has potential to be a very cool character. He's got a lot of cool stuff. He's got
So
fire
do
breath.
you think, hold on, you mentioned teleport there, and it sounds like you're kind of thinking of that as like a stealth substitute or an analog to stealth. Is that sort of your expectation for teleport? Because I could see it being you can attack characters in the back row, even if they're protected, but I could also see it being something more like mobile, where it allows you to change rows maybe even in a way that cancels an attack or something. I don't know. Do you want to go deeper on what you're thinking about with teleport there, Peter?
I didn't think about the mobile way, but that's actually kind of cool too. That'd be an interesting way to like play around with teleport. But the problem is, at least in Mortal Kombat, their teleports usually either lead into attack or it does the mobile thing. There's no like happy medium of teleport only does this. So it kind of locks down or it kind of messes with how you can run just a generic teleport. I personally would love to see it almost like a kind of an enhanced version of stealth, like teleport back and you strike a back row character.
What if it's just like
Something like
stealth
that.
plus mobile as one keyword, and that keyword is teleport?
I mean, that'd be fine too.
Yeah, honestly, I think that would be okay. Even if they
Yeah,
worded
I mean,
it like what is it an active camo where you gain stealth and dodge, but you
yeah,
gain them because of a different keyword? If the keyword teleport grants stealth and mobile, that's fine, right?
yeah, that's fine with me.
It
I
works.
mean, those keywords already exist on characters that probably don't really even need it and are really good with it. So why not?
And this box is rotten with teleporters.
Yeah.
It's true.
Like it has to be. All right, so Peter, who is your number one have to include
Oh,
Mortal Kombat character, and how do you want to see that implemented in verses?
um, I want to see Aaron Black, good old bounty hunter slash just all around cowboy, rootin' shooting, uh, coming into here. And I really hope we get his like play with his guns a lot because he has what's called the money shot, which is really terrible. But it's where I don't know if you guys remember, but he flips a
Content
coin in the air
warning
and he fires
again.
a shot. He fires a shot at it and it ricochets off a coin, which is like really cool. I'd love to see stuff like that. And like just the idea of this like kind of cowboy that doesn't really fit in this like ninja filled world. Like it's a world of ninjas and mercenaries and stuff, and here we have a cowboy.
So you failed
Done,
to
sold
mention
me.
what happens to the bullet after it ricochets off the coin.
I mean, it depends on what you do.
Well, in the fatality, it goes through. He shoots two bullets into two coins, and
And
they
it
go
goes
through
through
the
their
person's
eyes, if I
eyes,
remember
which is
correctly. Yeah.
wild.
Like, and just the whole thing is like he is all about like the guns, but he also plays around with like sand, which is weird to me. Like he has sand grenades and stuff that just like kind of knocks you off your feet and stuff like that, and caltrops. Like he's kind of like I think it's called like a zoner character. I can't remember. I don't really know the mechanics, but it's someone who kind of plays around and keeps you at the range they want you to be at. They don't necessarily get in your face, but they're still doing damage from a distance.
Sure. Do you have any thoughts on Aaron Black, Jason?
Yeah, given his ridiculous sharpshooting, maybe he's got something that negates dodge or something. You know, he's
Yeah,
Oh,
got
that'd be
a
cool.
got a way around some of those abilities that or characters can't avoid this range attack from Aaron Black or something. Yeah.
I think the first time we discussed this, somebody talked about him having the ability to like get bonuses from doing range attacks, but also being able to like range attack from the front row, or some kind of
That was you,
gimmick. Like, oh,
if I
was it?
remember correctly.
It's
But
it's
yeah,
been
like
a
when you
whole
said that,
week,
like that'd be
man.
really cool. Yeah, that's fine. Like that'd be a cool mechanic because there's so many things that say like if a character has range, then they can do this stuff. So that would really open it up to him being in front, but still having the bonus of range.
Ooh, and if it's considered a ranged attack, even from the front row, then he could conceivably still get the benefit of a ranged attack in that a melee character can't hit him back.
Um,
That
That
would be
could be
yeah.
really
neat.
cool. It'd be kind of an interesting thing.
Yep. That's a pretty sweet mechanic.
I'm all in on this now. If this doesn't happen, I'm gonna boycott SAG. I mean, I'm really not, but
Yeah, we are not organizing any boycotts today.
no, no.
Quite the opposite, actually. This
I'll
is like a
start a
whole like
small
a
letter
one
writing
hour hype
campaign.
reel.
I'll start a letter writing campaign. That's all.
We need Mortal Kombat version 2. We need another, but that's what it'll be. If it's not included the first time, they'll get us the second time, right?
Um, it's like a patch. We need the patch notes.
There you go. And I don't want to take us on a total tangent, but I got to say, given all the characters, I'm really curious to see how they squish this all into one box.
Oh yeah,
Well, I guess I'm going to take that segue that you laid out there, Jason, mentioning all the characters. So this is my rainbow unicorn nonsense vision. But if you look at the character list on Mortal Kombat 11, one of the included DLC characters is the Joker. And I feel like, what if that opens the door to get DC characters in verses again? Do you want to put a percentage chance on the likelihood of us seeing DC characters entering verses through the photographic universe through this like weird loophole backdoor path? Jason, what do you think about that idea?
Oh man, I would love for it to be true. I'm not all that optimistic though. Uh, I mean, not just DC, but you got Spawn, you got RoboCop, Rambo, Terminator. Like the possible branches off this that I would love. Like I would love to see Terminator and RoboCop come to verses. That would be so awesome. And Image Comics and but yeah, I don't think it's going to be related. Sadly.
You got any thoughts on my tinfoil hat theory here, Peter?
Well, I mean, like I said before, it is less. It's more than zero, but less than one.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's bring it back into the realm of reality, and I want to lay out who I really want to see. And I have to kind of break this down. It's less that I specifically want to see one character or another, but it's that I want to see very specific moves, signature things from these characters within verses. And the number one thing that I want to see is a bicycle kick mechanic for Liu Kang. Whether that comes in the form of a keyword power on the character, or if when you have this, so in old verses there was a thing they called legacy support, where there were cards, and we have some of this in new verses as well, where there's cards that you can only play them if you have a character named X. So if there's like a bicycle kick plot twist, perhaps working in with that combo mechanic like Jason sketched out earlier, or if it's a mechanic on the character, exactly how it works, I care a little bit less than just that it's there. I have kind of been speculating about something like Juggernaut, where he hits a front row character and they can hit a character in the back row. Now, that's not totally true to how the bicycle kick works. It's more like kicking the same person a bunch of times. And this is where we kind of run into some of the challenges. You know, you look at a character like Buffy, who has the ability to ready and attack multiple times in a turn. That would be cool flavor wise, but that is a really powerful and strong effect. And so I can't reasonably foresee a Liu Kang character having the ability to like do multiple attacks and having that be representative of the bicycle kick, but something, even if it's like double his attack value or I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be implemented, but that is my like has to be included or I'm going to riot, like Peter was talking about
Ooh,
earlier.
nice.
So what do you guys think about Liu Kang? I guess we'll start with Jason, just so we don't talk over each other.
Yeah, so I totally agree. Bicycle kick has to be there. Um, I wonder if they're going to make you say his turkey gobble noise when you do it. But um, the one thing with that move, like in the game, is it's kind of a big risk reward thing. Like if you pull it off, as far as a special move goes, it does a pretty decent amount of damage. But if you get blocked, you're getting punished for it. So I'd like to see some sort of risk reward uh, thrown in on that move.
I
Do you
mean,
have
it'd
any
be
thoughts on
interesting.
Liu
Like,
Kang, Peter?
so I mean, Liu Kang is one of those characters. Like, just as a character in general, he should be in that box because when you kind of think Mortal Kombat, there's a few characters that pop up, and he's one of them. Bicycle kick wise, thinking on Jason's thing, the punish thing would be kind of interesting. Like being able to be like, if you don't stun, take certain amount of, get struck back. I don't know exactly how it would be done, but like the idea of being able to punish a move for not stunning would be kind of interesting. That opens up some more doors to like counters and stuff like that. And then going to your legacy thing, that'd be interesting too, because you could still play around with the card and be like, gives X plus X damage. If your character's Liu Kang, also do this. Like you can easily play around while making a card like playable for everyone while giving bonuses to certain characters, which would be really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the drawbacks to Legacy cards in old verses is if you didn't, and that game didn't even have like a main character that stayed in play. So if you didn't draw your Batmans or you didn't draw your Punishers, those cards just rotted in your hand.
They did that a lot.
Yeah. Well, towards the end. Anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent about another game that I love. Peter, number two. Who's your number two Mortal Kombat character? How do you want to see him
Two
implemented?
for me is gotta be Johnny Cage. Like, I mean, he's iconic. He's that kind of like goofy 90s action character, which he is based off of, and I totally get that. And he's got one of the best moves in the game, which is just a straight splits to a nut punch.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good and it's so hilarious because every time I see it, I still giggle. Like, I did the splits, which is way over the top, and then I just punch you in the nuts out of everything. We got
I
dudes
imagine
flying over here
Jean-Claude
throwing
Van
spears.
Damme.
I'm just gonna do a splits and punch you in the nuts.
I suspect Jean-Claude Van Damme goes around in real life just doing the splits and cracking people in the balls from time to time. Seems like he'd be capable of that.
Yeah, I'd be like, good play, man.
Yeah, I think Johnny Cage based on Van Damme specifically?
It feels like he had to be.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
just the over the top.
well, and his look in the first Mortal Kombat, I think, is like almost straight out of Bloodsport, isn't it? Like the black MC Hammer pants.
Oh my god.
Maybe not straight out of, but inspired by. Maybe that's a better way to phrase
Yeah, like,
it.
but yeah, like the more I think about this, like I've never thought about that. That makes total sense of why he looked like a weirdo in the rest of compared to the rest. He was ready for the Kumite.
So I will say one of my favorite moments in the whole Mortal Kombat 11 story, and let's be clear, this is not Shakespearean fine art. This is like big dumb 80s movie style like action craziness, and I loved pretty much every minute of it. But one of my favorite moments was when modern day Johnny Cage, who's like in his 40s or whatever, is forced to come face to face with time travel Johnny Cage from 20 years ago, and it just annoys him to such a degree that he physically assaults the younger version of himself, which I think is something we can kind of all relate to a little bit. I'm going to throw this to Jason for your thoughts on Johnny Cage.
Yeah, I love that he like has matured so much that he can't even stand his younger self. And I think you made a allusion to kind of one neat moment that's maybe a little bit wonky with the whole time travel thing, but where his younger self gets a scar and then gets a wound, and then all of a sudden the scar shows up on Elder Cage's face. But yeah, he's an iconic character. I'm sure he'll be there, and I'm sure the Blitz punch will be well represented.
Well, let's stay with you, Jason. Who's your number two? What's another character you want to throw out there?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw out one that I'm actually a little nervous about, and that's the big bad of MK11, Chronica. She's a new addition, as far as I know, to this series as of that game, and of course, her specialty is time control and time travel. What makes me nervous is, as great as Super Awesome Games is with flavor, I'm a little nervous that they're going to try to do something that ends up going over the top and maybe gets broken, or at least is very hard to manage. Because how do you like represent time travel well? I think, there's the Cable has one of the old versions of Cable has a time travel ability, which basically I think just lets you reshuffle your deck. So maybe if they do that, that's not too crazy. But if they do something where you're trying to unwind things that have happened during the turn, which is kind of what happens in the game, I'm a little worried that might get convoluted and tricky.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all on the concern about how a time travel, in a fighting game, you rewind somebody's combo and you regain a bit of your health bar. In versus rewinding that, it's costing those resources. Like you might not ever recover from something that dramatic. Now, I will say in what I think is true Mortal Kombat fashion, being the big bad of the game, she's not a playable character, right?
She's not.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
So potentially they could introduce her as a boss card of some kind that's like limited and sort of kept out of general versus play, but they've leaned a little heavy into alternate game modes in the last couple of years. I kind of don't want them to devote a bunch of slots in the expansion to that sort of thing, but it would kind of be on theme. Peter, what are your thoughts on Chronica?
So yeah, like the time travel is a weird thing. Like, let's be honest. It'd be very cool if maybe not as a character, but maybe as like a plot twist or even like a supporting character. Like she could be your end drop. Like I think she'd be a great game ender versus a main character. Like because then you could be like, okay, well now you get access to all the plot twists in your KO pile. Like you can play them like you would play normally.
Oh, that's a good idea,
That's a
man. Like a
that's a
10
yeah, that's a
drop
really
who
good idea.
lets you play cards out of the KO pile as if they were in your
Yeah,
hand.
I mean,
Ooh.
her move is like, or her quote, if I'm reading correctly, "Arc of the universe bends to my will," so I can just start putting stuff in the way. I can just start. Okay, well, she's like a Valkyrie, but you don't have to pay for it. You just got to get to the drop.
It's a
That's
cool
actually a
idea,
really good
man.
idea. Yeah, for using her in a way that is flavorful, powerful, but not too convoluted to like make things confusing.
I think she'll be hard as a main character. She's a great supporting character, but like as a main, she'd be rough to do.
And I can see them just not making her a main character. Like, no, she's the big bad boss. She's not playable in the game. She's not like that would kind of
Yeah,
fit, honestly.
she's a 50, like a 10 drop that, or even like a like what is it? Who's the 15? Is it like
Tribunal, living
Tribunal?
tribunal.
Like she could be over 10 because there might be ways to with ramp and stuff. There's probably going to be well, there's not really ramp in photo, is there?
I can't think
Not
Not a
of
yet.
lot.
any.
Yeah.
There's
So like
anti-ramp.
getting to 10 in photo would be totally okay.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that would be photo's biggest drop then.
Yeah, I
It'd be
think
kind of cool.
Surtur is a 9 drop, and that's their current biggest drop, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be totally okay with yeah. And just make her kind of a defensive character versus she doesn't have to be hard into the aggro. She's more of a
Well,
behind the scenes kind of manipulator.
what does Mr. Burt cost? He's another big one.
Oh man.
I can't remember. Like he never sees play.
No.
All right. Well, let's
Oh
not
Yeah,
get
man.
he's just
sidetracked
an
on
eight.
Mr. Burt. Peter, what's another character you want to throw out for us to chit chat about here?
He's an 8 drop by the way.
Oh, Adra. There you go.
Um, so speaking of time travel, my other character, Garrus. He is kind of Krotika's minion, is the easiest way to talk about it. I think he's really cool because he's an immortal because he's a fixed point in time. So like unless you go back and find that point that he was pulled from, you can't really kill him. He's immortal. And he has one of the coolest I'm saying this in quotes, but deaths in that entire story in which Raiden wraps a chain around him and kicks him into the Blood Sea, which is bottomless. Like you can't die, but you can drown forever, so that's cool with me.
In the
But just the idea of
line,
like,
Garrus says, "You can't drown me," and Raiden says, "How unfortunate for you," as he gets pulled into the water. Well, the
yeah, like
blood.
it's so good. Like, well, once again, it's that '80s kind of over the top like action film is what that whole storyline feels like.
Yeah, that
But yeah,
line
I
is
mean,
one of my favorite moments in the whole thing, for sure. Like, that's up there.
yeah, and the plus of him is he's not as powerful as Kronika. Like he still has some time travel, but he just plays around with the sands of time more than anything. So you could just do that. Like, okay, so now he's got a way to rewind, like maybe, rewind it to heal a wound. Like that helps him, but it's not ridiculous. And yes, we know like healing is huge in this game, like going back to the Dana Scully conversation. But I think he could be one of those things like he might be an aggressive healer. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna heal a wound, but now I can't attack this turn. Like give a nice check and balance to it, which would be interesting.
His XP could be tied to taking wounds too, because part of what he does
Yeah.
in the game is like Doomsday in DC Comics. The more damage he takes, like the more he learns from it, and like
Yep.
evolves isn't quite the right word for Garrus, but that's sort of the same concept. What are your thoughts on Garrus, Jason?
Yeah, I was thinking. I think there's a spot where he gets air quotes killed and then rebirthed, sort of, and basically says, every time I just keep coming back stronger. So I could see him having some sort of like, oh, who's the guy that can't be wounded from Masters of Evil, the 7-drop? Trying to blank on his Claw. Yeah, like I could see him having a sort of like can't be wounded mechanic, and every time he recovers, add a +1 counter to him, and so he just keeps getting bigger and bigger if he gets attacked, or so he's just kind of a wall for you.
Oh, that'd be a cool supporting character mechanic. Like if you use like a 1-drop who can't be KO'd, but every time he gets stunned, he recovers with a +1 counter or something, like one more +1 counter than he had last time, something like that.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
Have them start small, so that way, you just I'd be very okay with that actually. Man, so many good ideas coming out of this one.
It makes me really I'm really eager to see what these actually look like in practice.
I am getting very Jonesy for now what it's going to be. All right, Ben.
So I feel like somebody has to say Sub-Zero. Like that's not actually well. Actually, it is sort of Bankshot who I want to talk about because the person I want to talk about is Nob Sabat. For anybody who's not familiar with Mortal Kombat since way back in the day, Ed Boon and I don't remember, is it John Tobias? I can't think of what the other guy's first name is, but Boon and Tobias were the two original. Mortal Kombat was their brainchild essentially. So Nob Sabat is their name spelled backwards, and he was originally included in the game as kind of like a secret character, almost a joke character. But within the MK11 storyline, it has now been revealed that he is the original Sub-Zero, Bi-Han, but he's been killed and then he's been sort of resurrected with these weird shadow powers. And the way this guy teleports around, has this like other shadow form that pops out of him at will. In fact, one of his again, content warning, one of his fatalities is cutting somebody's tummy open and then using like pouring his shadows into their body until they explode, which is absolutely insane compared to the Mortal Kombat that I remember from when I was a kid. But I think there could be something cool there. Now, I know we all have PTSD from Outriders, so I don't want to go too far in this direction. But the idea of like a main character who has a low hit point count, like maybe 3 hit points, but then also has these shadow forms that he can produce that maybe each have a hit point as well that he could use to kind of put in the way so you couldn't get to him. Some kind of way to employ these shadow forms of this character. That's something I'd really like to see. Although putting this much design energy and time and resources into a character as kind of like silly as Nob Sabat, maybe this is another tinfoil conspiracy of mine. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Nob there, Peter?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that you said content warning and then the word tummy in the same sentence, so that's pretty good.
As I was saying it felt weird, I'll admit.
No, I think the idea of a main character that's putting out like tokens, we'll say, like that's what he's doing, is he's refreshing his shadows. He could still be a 5-lifer because I mean, it seems like 5 life is almost a death sentence still, anyways, at this point. True. But like, okay, yeah, for like a blue, I can put out 2 shadow tokens that stay out until they die. We'll say give them 2 health, but give them low stats. They're just there to suck hits. They're chump blockers, so to speak. But then start having his powers based off how many, how many of these tokens does he have out? Does he have 1 out? Okay, well, he can make an attack to the back row. Does he have 2 out? Well, he can attack, multiple characters. That kind of stuff would be really interesting. It would really let them play with the play space that they have.
Thoughts on Nob, Jason?
Yeah, I was thinking he would be pretty cool for a main character. Also, with the idea Peter had to put out the shadow tokens that are kind of maybe somewhat fragile, and you can only have up to, I think, 2 at a time. I think that's the most shadows he ever puts out in the game at a time. But yeah, if you get them out early, you've instantly got a team attack. If you are later in the game. You've got some meat shields to take hits. I think that'd be a pretty cool mechanic.
All right, so I think we've gone through our top couple of characters, but I'm sure there's still a few more characters on the roster that we want to touch on. One that I would like to see is Devora. And while this character overall doesn't, she's not super important to the storyline. She's not, a classic well-known character like Raiden or Kano or somebody like that. She has a mechanic in MK11 that I absolutely love. And she's like this insect-based person where if she takes enough damage in the game, you can trigger where like this flying beetle thing like explodes out of her back, and then you have to like do damage to this tiny hitbox flying beetle thing, and some kind of mechanic where she spawns a token, and if they go the extra mile and that token is actually like a half size card, I would be delighted. But that's again probably asking for too much. But some kind of way where maybe less a main character but like a supporting character where she gets stunned and then this little beetle thing comes into play, kind of reminiscent of maybe like the Phantomax character from, I think it was the Deadpool expansion.
Mm. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd love to see that. And then as long as they don't have her like weird throwing bugs in your mouth ability, I'm fine. Ugh.
Yeah, that's a pretty disgusting, terrible, horrifying thing when she's vomiting maggots into your face.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible. I
Well,
I
and
don't
did
want
they ever
anything to do
say
with
if it
that.
like does anything, or is she just doing it because she can do it?
I think if you're like no, nothing ever is like born out of somebody's stomach like
Yeah.
alien style within the storyline that I can think of. So she's just like being gross. Like ew.
Just a worse infect because it doesn't
Stop
do
being
anything.
gross.
Put bugs in your mouth.
Yeah, this isn't a fatality. It's just a grossality. All right, Peter, what's another character you want to talk about, man?
I think Jason brought it up last time, but I very much agree with him. Shang Tsung. Did I pronounce that right? I feel really
Yep.
bad if I did not.
No, you got it.
But, like, the idea of a like shape shifting character, because I remember looking this up last time, and he doesn't have to like kill a person to absorb their souls to do it. He just has to kind of, I think it was like just magic knows how to do it.
Oh yeah, just
Like
because
that'd
he's
be
a
really,
sorcerer. Yeah,
yeah. And like the idea of like not necessarily mimic style, like, okay, well, I get all these abilities, but like I have a pile to the side, and for this turn I'm gonna spend a blue and I get the ability of, we'll say, Liu Kang. So now I can use that character for this turn, and then at the end of the turn it goes away. You can even say you can't use it anymore, like has to get discarded or removed from game. I think that'd be a really good way to take the mimic style like character and balance it.
sure.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
What are
Or
your thoughts on Shang
first,
Tsung, Jason?
yeah, I was thinking, similar to that, or First Evil is another one that comes to mind. But instead of having Shang Tsung like disappear, he just basically takes on the traits of that other character. So his wounds still keep stacking and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think he'd be a pretty interesting a character, and if you've got this kind of toolbox of other characters that you can pull in, he could be pretty versatile.
I kind of like to see the power worded so that you take whatever the shapeshift the form is that he's taking, you actually place that card on top of his card, just to kind of really lean into that shapeshiftery theme. Whereas with First Evil, you remove her from the, or it. I don't want to misgender the First Evil. You remove that card from the game and you get whatever it is off the KO pile. I like the idea of the Shang Tsung card remaining in play, but having this other card on top of it. And admit, I know I just criticized Super Awesome Games saying they go a little too far with the theme sometimes. I'm sort of doing that right now, but it sounds so fun.
I mean, and that's one of those things like, in like tournament games, you could easily just slide that character underneath. Like, no one's going to be mad if you like
Sure.
just kind of half-ass it on top of it. I'm sure it would be fine. I don't think that's going too far at all. Like, it's something that people be like, oh yeah, yeah, it does that. That's right, and then
Yeah, in a
move on with the
tournament,
game.
you could set them side by side.
Yeah,
just to make it, as a courtesy to your opponent or whatever. But I would like it if the game mechanic was like, this is the card.
it's like the punishment for, is it the gentleman, like talking, like there's no actual real punishment. People just kind of do it.
Yeah, you don't have to actually wag your finger creepily, but it's kind of fun to
Yeah.
do so,
Yeah, I
especially
mean, it
over
is.
webcam, because all you see is the wagging finger. You can't. Jason, are there any other characters you want to hit here before we wrap things up? I think we're getting to the bottom of the barrel, as it were.
Yeah, there's definitely interesting characters, and I think some of them I don't know as well. So you know, I think I'm going to call it there, but definitely a lot of options that they can do with this set. And, I'm really curious to see if this is one of the first um, additional IPs that would get a follow up or if it's going to be a one and done.
They certainly have the roster to support it, which has been one of the objections that's been floated historically about doing follow-ups like Aliens or Predator. It's like, well, we kind of hit all the main characters. That like there isn't a lot. We'd be kind of like revisiting, retreading old ground. Whereas I think Mortal Kombat could definitely has a big enough roster that they could do multiple expansions and not ever reprint a character. Is
And
there
it's 25
anybody you wanted
characters
to
in the
hit,
base.
Peter?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's 25 characters in the base game. Like that's that's plenty. I mean, and like selling like an expansion pack sells itself. I mean, you can just call it DLC and be move on.
There you go.
That would
Like,
be so cool.
or even if they can get the rights, like you call them combat packs
Oh, dude, you
with the
just
K in front of
melted
it.
me with your theme idea. That's so cool.
Like, I mean, it. I would buy. They might have trouble with it because the universe cards. That's what they sell stuff as. They call them DLC packs because it's deck loadable packs
Okay.
or deck loadable cards, which is really it's just shiny versions of the cards. But I mean, you could still probably get away with it.
Yeah, I
Or
think
like I said,
downloadable
combat.
content is a generic enough term that I doubt it's trademarked
Yeah,
by
for
anybody.
sure. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, 25 characters in your base game, and then adding all the characters, even just like not the property ones like Spawn or the Joker, just off of that. That's like another 7 to 8 characters. It's pretty good. I think it'd
Yeah,
be
I'm
really
pretty
cool.
thrilled about both this and the other big announcement from Gen Con. Uh, as we kind of bring things to an end here, I want to give you guys a chance to. Is there anything else that we didn't hit on that you wanted to talk about? Um, and if not, then is there anything you want to plug, promote, shout out here at the end? I'll start with you, Jason.
Yeah, just mentioning Gen Con, when The Boys was announced, I was blown away by that and thought for sure when they said, oh, there's another IP being announced the following day, I'm like, I was bracing myself for a letdown. And then they announced Mortal Kombat, and I'm a huge fan, and I was like, wow, really kind of blown away because thinking about some of the other IPs they've got, like X Files and Buffy, those are definitely iconic IPs, but they came out kind of way past the prime of those shows. Whereas definitely with The Boys and Mortal Kombat, still games coming out, so it's like they're hitting some of these IPs like still in their prime, which is pretty awesome, and I think exciting for versus.
Cannot agree more. I really the whole journey you sketched out there, like, oh my god, the boys. I thought this is the most excited I'm gonna get. Whatever they announce next, it's gonna have to be a letdown, and it absolutely wasn't. While I may be a little bit of a lapsed Mortal Kombat fan, uh, it got me in the heart parts without a doubt. I'm so thrilled for all of this. All right, Peter, was there anything else you wanted to hit here at the end?
Yeah, like first of all, I know you're already listening to it, but support the build phase. They put out great content. But also I agree with you guys on like watching The Boys. Like I wasn't super excited about it because I don't know about it as much. But I was like, there's no way they're gonna top this. I just assumed they were gonna be like, and now WandaVision is available to buy. I didn't think it was gonna be another IP reveal. which was huge to me. But like, yeah, I think Jason hit it on the head. Like getting the boys, getting Mortal Kombat in like things that are still generating talk enough that people can be like, oh, I know that. Like I get that Buffy and X Files has a huge following, but that's with an older crowd. Mortal Kombat and the boys, I don't know about the boys as much, but Mortal Kombat has a younger following. People know about that game. Even if it's not Mortal Kombat 11, but they recognize that name. I think that's going to be huge. Also, it opens it up to more fighting games. That would be great. I would love to see more fighting games in this game. Prime,
Yeah,
the system works.
it kind of fits so well. Like what fighting games are a collection of I noticeable, kind of iconic, like unique, distinct characters, Ken and Ryu aside, that come together and fight, which is sort of
Yeah.
exactly what I want out of Versus. So it's just it could not be a better fit, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think this is one of those sets like since like day one, like I've been looking forward to like all the new sets that come out. But this is one where I'm like, I will order this day of. I will probably pre-order this so I can have it day of, so I could sit down and really start digging into these cards. I have not felt this way about Versus in a very long time. Like it's always been like, I can wait. Now this is like I need to get my hands on this. I need to start getting games in. I am gonna start probably proxying preview cards if we get them.
Unless they don't
I'm
print
all in.
Aaron Black, and then you're done, right?
Yeah, then I'm done. Game's done. Midwinter's over. Done.
All right. Well, hey guys, I really appreciate taking the time to talk through all this with me twice
My
due
pleasure.
to, again, my screw up. So you have been very magnanimous with your time. Greatly appreciated. And I guess until next time, go win some games.